With 10 simple words, the Lakers dynasty imploded
Man, I came here to win rings, not babysit anyone.
on the night of January 13th as the world watched the Kings dismantle them on the court. The real demolition was happening down the tunnel. Insiders reported a furious confrontation between Rich Paul and Austin Reeves' agent, ignited by a clandestine plot to trade Reeves simply to secure Bronny's place in the lineup. The chaos escalated inside, where LeBron James allegedly cornered coach J.J. Redick, as the team's veterans began to single out Bronny as the source of the rot. Incredibly, the entire meltdown can be traced back to a single message Bronny sent to the team's group chat, a message that changed the fate of the franchise. But before dissecting that leaked text, it is crucial to understand the pressure cooker environment of January 13, 2026. The official record shows a brutal 124-112 loss to the Sacramento Kings, a complete mess on the court. But the true spectacle began the moment the team walked off the hardwood, entering a tunnel where the animosity was so intense it felt palpable even on television. Usually, professional athletes handle their conflicts behind the sanctity of locked doors. But this time was different. According to multiple eyewitnesses on the ground, including ESPN's Dave McMenamin, Reggie Barry was already lying in wait. For those who don't know, Barry is the influential agent from AMR who steers Austin Reeves' career. And his purpose that night wasn't to celebrate a game. He was there for a showdown with Rich Paul. Fans in the front row witnessed an unbelievable scene, two of the league's most formidable agents nearly coming to blows before the players had even reached their lockers. The source of Barry's rage was clear. Reeves was on the verge of signing a $200 million max contract deal that defines not just a career, but a legacy. And Barry was openly accusing Rich Paul of orchestrating a campaign to sabotage Reeves' value, all to protect Bronny James's precarious position in the rotation. The question of how Bronny was involved and how Paul could possibly undermine Reeves while he was sidelined with an injury is where the conspiracy truly unfolds. While security intervened to separate the warring agents, a far more significant confrontation was brewing behind the closed doors of the locker room. The public fight was merely a diversion. The real story emerged when LeBron finally confronted J.J. Redick, exposing a hidden clause in the coach's contract that superstar Luka Doncic was never meant to discover. This moment connects everything. To grasp why two powerful men were ready to fight in a hallway, one must return to the events of November 15th. That was the night LeBron James altered the course of the franchise forever during a game against the Milwaukee Bucks. The final score was a complete deception. On the surface, the Lakers secured a massive win, with Luka erupting for 41 points to carry the team to victory. But the player rotation told a story of impending disaster. Bronny James had been given the start, yet he spent a mere 10 minutes on the floor, contributing 0 points on 0 for 2 shooting and making absolutely zero impact. At this elite level of competition, a performance that hollow is not just a statistical anomaly. It transforms a player into a deadweight for the entire team. Every possession Luka spent trying to compensate for Bronny was a moment stolen from his own pursuit of the MVP award. Consider the situation. Luka, at 26 years old and in his athletic prime, was being forced to carry a legacy project over the finish line night after night. This wasn't just about statistics, it was about draining his competitive energy. When a player is performing at an MVP level, the absolute minimum expectation is that his teammates are competent. Yet with Bronny on the court that night, the Lakers' net rating plunged to a staggering -4.2. For a team that managed to win that figure is damning. It was definitive proof that the Lakers were winning in spite of Bronny, not because of him. During that game, Redick finally reached his breaking point. Sources claim he exploded on the sidelines, screaming at Bronny to take a shot before angrily yanking him from the game for good. In that instant, their unspoken pact was shattered. League whispers had long suggested that LeBron had personally installed Redick as coach, but with a non-negotiable term. That term was that Bronny had to receive minutes playing alongside Luka. The plan was for Redick to secretly develop him in high-stakes games, positioning him as the heir to the Lakers' throne. The entire season was a developmental project masquerading as a championship campaign. But as Redick watched the Bucks exploit Bronny on every single play, his coaching instincts overrode the secret directive. He knew he could either protect LeBron's project or win the game, but he could not do both. Following that Bucks game, Luka went public with his frustrations. He sat for an interview and declared to the entire sports world that he was finished with the experiment. He stated plainly he was there for championships, not to act as a babysitter, and that any player needing development belonged in the G League. That single quote detonated the locker room, transforming it into a war zone. LeBron, who was inactive that night due to sciatica, was incensed. He reportedly unleashed his fury on Redick in private, accusing him of betraying their arrangement. This was more than a simple argument. It was the official birth of two warring factions, Team Luka versus Team Clutch. Rich Paul, seeing LeBron's influence begin to crack, immediately launched a counteroffensive. If Luka was no longer willing to mentor Bronny on the court, Paul would manipulate the organization to remind Luka precisely who held the real power in Los Angeles. He cleverly avoided suggesting a trade for Bronny, as that would be a public admission of failure. Instead, on January 13th, the very same night as the disastrous loss to the Kings, Paul used his Game Over podcast to attack the one player Luka truly respected on the team, Austin Reeves. Paul began referring to Reeves not as a teammate, but as an asset, arguing that to bolster Luka's defense, the Lakers needed to trade Reeves for a defensive force like Jaren Jackson Jr. He mused that if he were running the Lakers, he would likely target the Memphis Grizzlies to make a trade for Jaren Jackson. While his co-host agreed it would be a great fit, Paul coyly continued framing the move as giving up Reeves to acquire a superior player. It was a cold, calculated power play, nothing short of pure blackmail. The message to Luka was brutally clear. Either get on board with the Bronny project, or his closest friend on the team would be traded out of town. The move was engineered to leave Luka completely isolated without any of his allies. You have to appreciate the psychological warfare. Rich Paul and LeBron were effectively declaring, "We own this environment. We are the ones who decide your fate here." They were attempting to strong-arm Luka into mentoring Bronny by threatening the one relationship that made his time in Los Angeles bearable. That blatant threat was the direct catalyst for the heated clash between Rich Paul and Reggie Barry in the tunnel later that evening. Reggie Barry was not about to stand by and watch Rich Paul use Austin Reeves as a pawn in their toxic game. But what Paul failed to grasp was that the bad blood was already boiling over, far more than a podcast quote. Luka was already holding on to a secret that had caused him to lose every ounce of respect for the James family months prior. This wasn't about minutes, it was about betrayal. And the entire conflict traces back to one leaked group chat message from Bronny, a message that proved this was never about the game. It was always a vanity project for his family. The contents of that text were more than a simple leak. They were the smoking gun, proving the Lakers were being managed like a family business instead of a championship team. And the damage it inflicted on the relationship between LeBron and his supposed best friend, Anthony Davis, was catastrophic. If you believe the tunnel incident in January was just about a bad loss, you're missing the entire story. To find the precise moment the Lakers organization started to implode, you have to go back to February 1st, 2025. That was the day the NBA's balance of power was shattered. It was the day the Luka for Davis trade went from an impossible rumor to a stunning reality. But the trade itself wasn't the bombshell. It was how the players discovered it. According to Uren Weitzman's book, A Hollywood Ending, the deal was meant to be a tightly held front office secret to protect the locker room's chemistry. The players were supposed to be informed personally by management. Instead, Bronny James allegedly saw a tweet from Shams Charania and immediately forwarded it to the team group chat. Just imagine being Anthony Davis. You delivered a championship to this franchise. Your body is worn down from anchoring the entire defense, and you learn you're being exiled to Dallas because a rookie, your teammate's son, dropped a link in the group chat. Davis's reply was ice cold, expressing disbelief that he was being shipped to what he considered the worst franchise in the history of the league. LeBron also sent a stunned text, but don't be fooled. He wasn't merely surprised, he was in a state of sheer panic. He had not only lost his closest friend, his number 2 option, and a defensive powerhouse in Davis. In exchange, he got a superstar in Luka, who would now force him to share the spotlight. LeBron James has spent 2 decades as the undisputed center of the NBA universe. Then overnight, the Lakers acquired a 25-year-old superstar who was superior to LeBron in every conceivable way. This is where the animosity began. LeBron's grand plan was for the Lakers' spotlight to pass seamlessly to Bronny after his retirement. But Luka's arrival completely annihilated that plan. You cannot promote a prince when a king in his absolute prime is already ruling the court. As it stands, Luka leads the NBA in scoring with 33.6 points per game, posting historic numbers on a nightly basis. And despite this, the Lakers are barely a 500 team. The reason? Nepotism. When Luka and Bronny are on the floor together, the Lakers' net rating craters to a dismal negative 4.2. Think about that for a second. You have the single greatest offensive player alive being dragged down because the roster is being held hostage by Bronny James. Luka is out there playing 10 times harder than anyone, logging heavy minutes simply to enable a father-son vanity tour. To understand why this disgusts him, you have to look at his background. Luka was not handed a golden ticket into the league. He became a professional at 13 years old in Madrid. He was battling grown men who had families to support when he was still in middle school. He possesses zero tolerance for anyone who hasn't truly earned their position. In Luka's world, the rule is simple: if you can't perform, you don't belong. Even the all-time greats recognize it. Charles Barkley went on inside the NBA and absolutely torched the situation. He argued that the team had to move on, calling it the only logical choice. At some point, he insisted they had to hand the keys to Luka and Austin. Because, as he pointed out, you can't justify paying a player $50 million a year to be the third best guy on the team. That comment struck a deep nerve with LeBron, a man who has never been a third option anywhere not in Miami, and definitely not in Cleveland. But with Luka now, the team's undeniable alpha LeBron is reportedly using Bronny's court time as a means of control. It's his way of saying, I might not be the best player on this team anymore, but I still decide who plays. But if you think this is only about ego or playing time, you are mistaken. This feud is deeply personal, and it has been simmering for years. Just wait until you see the evidence from November 2025. The moment captured on film when LeBron physically refused to shake Luka's hand. You see, LeBron James is not just chasing greatness on the basketball court. He wants to be the chief executive officer of the entire culture. It's a strange ambition, but with LeBron, nothing should be surprising. However, back in 2020, his massive ego took a direct hit that it still hasn't recovered from. And it's all because Luka Doncic told him no right to his face. He was pitching Nike on his own sub-brand, a kingdom to be built in his own image, just like Michael Jordan. The truth he could never accept was that he and Michael Jordan were fundamentally different animals. In his endless war against MJ's shadow, he pushed Nike for his own signature brand with a singular star chosen to launch it: Luka Doncic. LeBron didn't just consider him, he publicly declared it on podcasts and in interviews. He saw Luka's brilliant team-first style of play and believed he could possess it. He thought the future was for sale. I wanted Luka to be the first sign of Team LeBron when he was going through his situation, and it didn't happen. He's still under the same umbrella of Nike's with Jordan. But I wanted him, but Nike moved too slow. But let's be real. Luka had zero desire to align with LeBron. As a competitor and a man everyone knew, Luka's killer instinct mirrored Michael Jordan's. The reality is, if any active player stands a chance of building a legacy as monumental as MJ's, it's Luka Doncic. So snubbing Team LeBron, Luka inked a colossal contract with the Jordan brand. Just imagine the sting of that rejection for a man like LeBron. For 20 years, he had relentlessly pursued the specter of Michael Jordan, desperate to match those 6 championships and that iconic global stature. And then the one player he handpicked to be his brand's flagship star didn't just turn him down, he defected to the enemy. LeBron would later confess that Luka choosing Jordan over him was a decision that would weigh on him. Like, it's going to haunt me a little bit. It's going to haunt you, but I want him to be my guy. I want him to be my first guy. Fast forward to 2026, and that lingering haunt has festered into raw hostility. Luka is now the undeniable king of the Lakers, averaging a staggering 33.6 points and dominating the league's scoring race, all while showcasing Michael Jordan's logo on his sneakers. With every step-back three, Luka drains at the Staples Center. LeBron is forced to stare at the emblem of the very man whose legacy he can never seem to escape. If you need definitive proof of how deeply this rivalry has cut, just watch this clip from late November of 2025. Following a dead ball, Luka approaches LeBron directly hand extended for a routine low five between teammates. This is the simplest gesture in the sport. LeBron locks eyes with him, acknowledges the outstretched hand, and then dripping with contempt deliberately snubs him. That wasn't an accident. It was 5 years of wounded pride and bitter rejection erupting in a single cold moment. LeBron no longer saw a potential successor. He saw the man who spurned his empire and then seized his throne. This goes beyond a rivalry on the court. It's a $100 million grudge, and neither man is backing down. But that icy snub was just the tip of the iceberg. LeBron has been taking veiled passive-aggressive jabs at Luka for years. You see, LeBron James now holds the title of the most overpaid third option in the annals of sports history. And frankly, his behavior reflects it. Toward the end of last year, the atmosphere in Los Angeles didn't just change, it plummeted. For the first time in 23 years, LeBron's usage rate sank to a career low, sitting around 28%. For context, that is the on-court equivalent of being demoted. And anyone who has watched LeBron for more than 5 minutes knows he does not play second fiddle. Instead of accepting his new role and letting the world's greatest 26-year-old talent take the reins, LeBron launched a full-blown media assault. Every post-game presser became a clinic in playing the martyr. He would sit at that podium, lean into the microphone, and lament about all the sacrifices he was making for the team's benefit. It was utterly humiliating to watch. His unspoken message to the world was clear. Sure, Luka is scoring 33.6 a game, but only because I am permitting it. The arrogance is laughable. He was attempting to frame sharing the court with a once-in-a-generation player as some benevolent act of charity on his part. But the mask truly slipped after the incident with Reich when he went on ESPN and said, and I'm quoting here, "If we're depending on a 41-year-old to be our best defender, we're in trouble." The lack of self-awareness was staggering. That wasn't a critique of the team. It was a dagger aimed squarely at Luka's defense. He was in effect calling the league's most valuable player lazy on national television. But here is where it becomes truly absurd. LeBron is out there posturing as a defensive expert, while his own son ranks statistically as the single worst defensive player in the entire NBA. Let's just examine the data because it is damning. During that same period, Bronny's defensive rating was a catastrophic 120.5. Bronny was getting absolutely torched on every single possession during his limited 7.5 minutes of court time. And yet his father had the nerve to criticize Luka. Luka is logging 38 minutes a night, shouldering the entire offensive load for a rookie who has no business being in the rotation, only to be publicly demeaned by that rookie's father. It is beyond contemptible. And make no mistake, this protective father routine is escalating into something much more menacing. For years, LeBron has intimidated people to safeguard the James family brand, but his actions on March 6, 2025 at Madison Square Garden radiated pure mafia enforcer energy. Stephen A. Smith was simply doing his job. He delivered a candid analysis of Bronny on First Take, stating the undeniable truth the kid was 0 for 7 and belonged in the G League. So what did LeBron do during the Lakers-Knicks game? He confronted Stephen A. Smith at his courtside seat in the middle of the game and began verbally attacking him. He warned him, "Stop messing with my son," launching into a tirade so aggressive that arena security prepared to intervene, fearing the confrontation could spiral into physical violence. It was the kind of fragility you'd never expect from a billionaire king, triggered by a reporter who dared to state a simple fact: his son couldn't hit a jump shot. The response was pure alpha dog dominance, and the fallout was swift and brutal. Suddenly, anyone who valued their access to the throne had to fall in line. In an instant, Draymond Green transformed into a public relations attack dog, savaging Stephen A. Smith on his podcast and icing him out completely. It was a protection racket elegantly simple and ruthlessly effective. Tell the truth about Bronny and you were exiled. If you pointed out that Bronny's 2.3 points per game average was cratering the second unit, you were branded an enemy. Every simmering conflict, the tunnel, fight the grudge against the Jordan Brand, the Ransdorf situation, all reached a boiling point on February 5th of this year, the day of the trade deadline. This was the moment the Lakers front office had to publicly concede that their Big Two experiment was a complete failure. As the rest of the league armed themselves for a playoff run, the atmosphere in Los Angeles was toxic. The front office trapped in an impossible dilemma. Were they to make a bold move to salvage their dying season, or were they to continue protecting the Kings family business at all costs? They ultimately chose the most predictable path, making a trade that felt like a direct insult to Luka, shipping out Gabe Vincent for Luke Kennard. The disrespect was staggering. Luka was grinding out 38 minutes a night, shouldering a historically massive offensive load and all but pleading for a defensive anchor. Marcus Smart was already sacrificing his body on defense every night, but he was just one man. Luka needed a veteran enforcer. The whispers had grown to a roar. Draymond Green was supposedly ready to relocate to Los Angeles in a league-shattering three-team trade. But the Lakers flinched. They refused to part with the one untouchable asset to get the deal done. And so instead of the warrior he needed, Luka got Luke Kennard, another shooter tasked with standing in the corner and watching him carry the world. If the trade deadline represented the quiet death of the Lakers season, the All-Star voting was the public execution of LeBron's reign. For the first time in 23 years, the name LeBron James was not announced as an All-Star starter. The man who had been the undisputed face of the league since the 2026 rookies were toddlers had been demoted to a reserve. And sitting on the throne at the absolute summit of the sport, Luka Doncic, who hadn't just made the team. He was the #1 overall vote-getter on the entire planet with over 3.8 million fan votes, officially becoming the new face of the NBA in the city LeBron called his own. The 2026 All-Star Game was set for the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, and the billboards featured not the 41-year-old icon, but the 26-year-old Slovenian superstar wearing Jordans. You have to know that eats LeBron alive. He has spent a lifetime as the apex predator. Now he was forced to watch his crown get snatched in real time by the one player who refused to join his empire, who refused to mentor his son, and who was now undeniably more popular than him.